Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Let's take a look at one of those.
I'm delighted to welcome two distinguished guests to our factory today. The Right Honourable Alex Salmond, I know you'll all recognise him, First Minister of Scotland, and Nicola Sturgeon. Nicola is Deputy First Minister and Cabinet Secretary for Parliament, Government, Strategy, Infrastructure, Investment and Cities. Wow, what a title. I've always wanted one like that. But anyway, she covers a fantastically large portfolio and does a great job. These are two people you'll all know, and they have been dedicated all of their lives to repositioning Scotland on the political landscape. They're on a journey to create new opportunities and to globalise their business, Scotland. Well, on that basis, no surprise they're visiting ADL to see how it's done. But being more serious about the subject, it would be wrong of me here today not to take the opportunity to put on record the terrific support that we as a company have had from the Scottish Government. It's support that's helped us introduce apprenticeships across the business, people development programmes at all levels, and vitally, to develop new world-leading products that have taken us to every corner of the world. In the process, as all of you guys know, we've tripled the size of this business. Let me say quite emphatically, you cannot do that without grassroots support back at the ranch. So on behalf of everyone at ADL, please accept our big thank you for your support over the years. Now, I believe the First Minister and Nicola later would like to share a few thoughts with you. So please welcome Scotland's First Minister, Alex Salmond.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. Well, Bill and friends, we're here to launch this booklet, Scotland's Economy, the Case for Independence. But perhaps the first thing to address is why are we launching it here in Falkirk at Alexander Dennis's. I should say Alexander Dennis is newly voted Scotland's Engineering Company of the Year just last week. Well, the reason we're here is this is an outstanding success story. There's now a global workforce of 2,000 plus, 900 folk here in Falkirk. It's at the forefront of new technology. There's a flow of new apprentices coming through this factory. There's a innovation in terms of new products coming to fruition next year. It leads in international marketplaces, and 50% of the product of this factory are now new developed buses going around the world in that international marketplace. So this company is an outstanding example of how to take something and realise its potential using the skills of the workforce and using the ingenuity of new products and using the opportunities of an international marketplace. It is a symbol and an example of Scotland's economic strength. Now, I say that because we wanted to launch this in a manufacturing company. You know, some folk around Scotland say we don't manufacture things anymore. Well, certainly we should manufacture more, but it's important to stress manufacturing at the centre of our ambitions for Scotland. The Scottish manufacturing sector exports nearly 15,000 million pounds a year in terms of products. We also have a food and drink sector which turns over more than 12,000 million pounds annually, a creative industry sector of 5,000 million, a life science industry which employs 30,000 people in Scotland. We've got some of the best colleges and universities in the world. We've got a quarter of the renewable energy potential of the entire continent of Europe. And I mention all these things because it's important that we recognise them. A lot of the concentration on the debate on economics comes in terms of oil and gas, in terms of the financial sector as big industries in Scotland. And of course they are huge industries in Scotland. But all of the things I've mentioned are also vital to the Scottish economy. If we're going to develop as a country, then we've got to understand that variety of economic strengths and make sure we have the right policy mix to develop these industries and sectors further. We have some surprising allies in terms of making making these judgments and decisions. Just this weekend, Dennis Healy, somebody which the older members here, like myself, can remember that Mike Yarwood used to do the most incredible impression of when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer in the Labour government. But Dennis Healy, this weekend in the Sunday Post, casually admitted that, of course, he said, back in the 1970s, the Treasury underestimated the extent of Scotland's oil and gas resources because we didn't want people to vote for the SNP. When you get to Dennis Healy's age, you don't mind telling the truth. And he said, of course, Scotland could prosper as an independent country. And therefore, when we get our previous opponents admitting the truth and the reality, then that is an important aspect of the debate, as is the fact that the national balance sheet for Scotland shows that for every one of the last 30 years, Scotland has contributed more per head on average than the rest of the United Kingdom. Even the leading opponents of Scottish independence are now accepting that Scotland could survive and prosper as an independent country. We have huge potential, but to realise that potential, we have to have more of the levers of economic power. Bill was kind enough to mention, and some of the things that we do control in Scotland, we've used that influence to help this company develop. We're not responsible for this company's development. The people who are responsible for the company's development are yourselves. But we've used the instruments of power in the economy that we have at the present moment to help this company develop. We've helped with the Apprenticeship Fund. We've helped with the Innovation Fund for new products. And just in the same way, with the limited powers we have at the present moment, we can help companies develop. So if we control the taxation and spending in the country, then we can use these economic levers to make the country develop further and faster. Our economic policy at the present moment is largely determined at Westminster. It's Westminster that refused to invest Scotland's resources in a fund for future generations. It's Westminster who've been cutting capital investment in a recession. The one thing you must not do is cut back on investment in the future during a recession. And it's Westminster who've allowed too much of the economic activity of the United Kingdom to be concentrated in the southeast of England. We can't afford to make these mistakes in Scotland, nor can we afford to have mismanagement by governments we have never elected setting the economic temperature and course for Scotland. We need the economic powers to boost our competitive position. The reason that this company is successful in international marketplaces, it has the best products at the right price in these international marketplaces. Now, this document here shows how the Scottish Government could use the economic powers currently held at Westminster to boost capital spending, to give our companies a competitive advantage, to boost international engagement of Scotland by cutting the cost of flying in and out of Scotland and having more direct flights. Useful if you're going on holiday, vital if you're conducting commercial business from Scotland. It sets out intentions to improve childcare in Scotland so as we can get more women into the workforce in this country, that great underutilised resource which could be utilised with the proper approach to childcare, as so many countries across Europe already have. And it sets out the range of powers and options that Scotland would have as an independent country. Our argument is we've got what it takes. Scotland has what it takes to be a successful independent country. But just as in this factory, skilled workers need the tools to do the job, so it is for a national economy. And our message today is give Scotland the economic tools so that we can do the job to build a successful independent nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, First Minister. Can I join the First Minister in saying what a pleasure it is to be here at Alexander Dennis this morning. It's been incredibly interesting to have a tour around this manufacturing plant, to meet and speak to many employees and indeed some of the apprentices who are learning their trade here. It was particularly interesting to speak to employers who've been here for many years, many decades in some cases, who started out as apprentices, which I think is a real inspiration to those young people here today. The document that we are launching today, as the First Minister has just said, sets out the massive strengths and advantages of the Scottish economy. It sets out why in Scotland we should be extremely confident about our economic future as an independent country. We can more than afford to be independent, and that is set out very clearly in this document today. Put very simply, independence means having the powers to build on those areas of comparative advantage, but also the powers to address those areas where we need to do things better, where we need to improve on our current performance. And the fact of the matter is, we know that there are many European countries of a very similar size to Scotland who right now are more successful than we are in Scotland, despite all of the strengths and natural advantages that we have as a country. And we also know that these countries that are successful, that are showing the way as small, independent European countries, share certain characteristics. They all have a very strong international focus. They have relatively high levels of trust and low income inequality. They don't have the same gap between rich and poor as we see here in Scotland. They have effective government, and they have a very strong emphasis on innovation, on investment, and on technology. In short, they, as independent countries, have the ability to tailor their economic policies to meet their needs and suit their particular circumstances. And I want to focus on just one of these characteristics, on one of these areas, investment spending, and use it as an example of the way in which the current Westminster system is holding us back and constraining our ability to grow the economy and create more jobs. As all of you know, the current Westminster government is slashing capital investment. The Scottish Government has long argued that that is the wrong thing to do. We have consistently argued that in a time of economic difficulty, the right thing to do is to support direct capital spending on infrastructure, not to dramatically cut it. And the fact of the matter is, that ability to make these judgments for ourselves and to be accountable to the Scottish people for those judgments is exactly the kind of power that being independent brings home to our own Parliament here in Scotland. In this document today, we as an illustrative example are setting out what would have happened, what could have happened if the Scottish Government's capital budget had been maintained in real terms at the level it was at in 2009-10 rather than cut in the way that it has been. If it had been maintained in that way, that would have meant an additional £7 billion of investment in the 5 years up to 2014-15. And Scottish Government officials estimate that that would have supported an additional 19,000 jobs in the Scottish economy. 19,000 additional people in jobs like you, earning a living, supporting their family and helping to create revenues for the economy that in turn would have better equipped us to deal with and pay down the deficit that successive Westminster governments have left us with. And as the balance sheet that is published in this document shows, that increased level of investment could have been achieved in the context of our relative fiscal strength compared with the UK over these past 5 years. So that's just one example, but one very tangible example with real implications for real people right across this country of how much better we could do with having decision-making powers here in Scotland. And that is the essence of independence, taking responsibility for our own future, taking our own decisions, making our own judgments and being accountable for them. And this debate, the debate we are having around this document today, the debate we will have as a nation over these next few months, boils down to this question: who will do a better job of running Scotland's economy? Will it be people like you who live here and work here, or will it be Westminster? On the experience of successive Westminster governments, I think the overwhelming answer to that question is that we can do a better job here in Scotland, and that's the argument at the heart of this document today.
I think there's there's one or two questions that people might have.
It is indeed, First Minister. Firstly, thank you for coming along today. I appreciate you're very busy people, but if you were willing to take a few questions,
Sure.
I'll pitch that to the audience. So folks, questions please. This is Blair Gilchrist. Blair is a second-year apprentice.
I'm a second-year apprentice here at Alexander Dennis, and I was wondering, are we doing enough as a nation to encourage youngsters like myself into industry and in engineering in particular?
Well, it's a great question, Blair, but apart from anything else, this is Scottish Apprenticeship Week. This week is Scottish Apprenticeship Week, when we acknowledge the number and success of folk who are moving into apprentices in Scotland and those who have qualified as with their skills. We've put a lot more effort into numbers of apprentices in recent years. They've gone from 16,000 to 26,000 in the last 4 years. I know the best thing about it is that in Scotland, every single apprentice like yourself has a job. It's not like that necessarily elsewhere. Every single apprentice is employed. And that means both yourself and the company have a joint interest in your development in terms of skills. Another really good thing is we now know, because we did a survey just a couple of months back, that 93% of apprentices are in employment 6 months after they complete their apprenticeship. Because the other thing people have to know when they're doing an apprenticeship and having a job but they're not getting paid that much, they want to know that it's going to be worthwhile. They're going to have a job at the end of it. Now, I think the success of the apprenticeship expansion has been the principal reason, not the only reason, but the principal reason that youth unemployment in Scotland has come down by a third over the last 18 months, from 24% to 16%. Now, that's still too high, but that is a substantial indication of progress that's not being repeated elsewhere in these islands. But the other aspect of your question is interesting as well. Enough about getting folk into engineering. And I'm wondering about, because I asked one of your colleagues, Kyle, when I was going round, how he's getting on. Are you in second year, Blair? Yeah, he's in second year as well. And he said, yeah, really great. It's fantastic in here. And I just think we've got to demonstrate to people that if they do an apprenticeship in a company like this, then it's a passport to a lifetime career of skill. Once people know that, I know it's not a kind of here today, gone tomorrow job, but it's something, a skill which will take them through this company or through other companies, right through a substantial career, then folk will want to get employed in engineering. And one of the reasons for doing this launch here today is to get across the message that Scotland has successful companies, that engineering, which is in Scotland's DNA incidentally, is still very much part of Scotland's future, and we should celebrate Scottish manufacturing. And young folk like yourself can look forward not just to a good training, but to a really great career as a result of that training.
Des Henderson. Des is a production manager within the plant.
Good morning. Welcome to ADL. It's a pleasure to have you visiting the company this morning. Now, my question is quite it's a personal one. Elderly people are a growing percentage of our population, and regrettably the number suffering dementia and Alzheimer's is on the increase. Trying to find care homes for them is near impossible, and it's heartbreaking when you're involved with it. My question is, have you plans to tackle this and give elderly people the respect they deserve?
That's a really important question, and I can tell it's a very personal question. It's estimated that over the next, I think, 25 years, the number of people in Scotland living with dementia will double. So that gives us a sense of the scale of the issue that we are dealing with. And what that means in human terms is that there's probably very few people in this room just now or out there in Scotland that will not in some way be touched by dementia, either directly or through a family member or a friend or somebody they know in a workplace. So that's the scale of the issue that we're dealing with. In Scotland, we've treated dementia as a national priority since 2007. And our aim is to support people with dementia and the networks that have to care for them so that they are as able as possible to live independently at home, for as long as possible. And we've been focusing on two things. One is to increase the numbers of people with dementia who are getting diagnosed as early in their condition as possible, because by its very nature it's a condition that can go undiagnosed for a long period of time, and if you're not being diagnosed, then it stands to reason you're not getting access to the services and the support that you need. So we've been very successful working principally through GP practices at increasing the rate of diagnosis, and we're actually doing better in that respect, I believe now, than any other part of the UK. The second thing we're doing, and Alzheimer's Scotland, the main charity that deals with people with dementia, has described this as a world first. We've given a commitment to a 1-year post-diagnostic package of support. So once somebody's diagnosed, for that period of a year, they'll have a named worker, somebody that they can go to for advice and support, because all of the evidence says if they get the right advice and support in that early period after diagnosis, they're more able to live independently for longer after that. And conversely, if they don't, that's when difficulties will be encountered and they're more likely to end up in care homes rather than being able to live at home. So that's the kind of things we are doing. This is a big challenge, not just for Scotland, it's a big challenge for countries right across the world, but I do believe we're at the cutting edge of what we need to be doing in Scotland, and we'll continue to work really hard to make sure, in your words, older people get not just the support they need, but are able to live in dignity with a disease that is absolutely heartbreaking for everybody who experiences it.
Julie Avery. Julie is commercial manager.
We sell buses around the world, but we've never been successful in countries like Sweden or Germany. However, Scotland seem to have an open door approach to companies like Mercedes and Volvo. Can't we do more to protect Scottish-based companies?
Julie, some folk think that the Commonwealth Games is going to be the biggest event in Scotland next year. Some folk think it's the anniversary of the Battle of Bannockburn, and some folk think it's the Ryder Cup, and a few of us think it might be the date of the referendum. Actually, the biggest date in Scotland next year will be the launch of the Plus Major Model Change Innovation Project, the new bus produced in this factory, which is going to take the world markets by storm. So I think the best way to assist companies like this is to assist in these innovation projects, as we've been doing, because that bus, as the other models we see here, can be hugely successful in world markets, and that's the best way to go about it. We have a green bus fund, as you know, which is open to any manufacturer, any bus company for orders, but it just so happens that 2/3 of the orders from the green bus fund have been won by this company. Now that's because you've got the best product, and that's the way to make sure that the orders are won. We're no longer in a world where you can put up trade barriers and say, we're only going to take buses from our country. If we did that, of course, you wouldn't be selling buses to South America, to Australia, to New Zealand, to Hong Kong. We're in a world where you survive by the excellence of your product, as this company is doing, and half of the production of this company is now international. But the job of government is to make sure when this company goes into an innovation, like that substantial innovation, the big date for next year, then it's supported as it is by the Scottish Government. And the job of the Scottish Government agencies is to help companies who are not as experienced in the international marketplace as this one is, to get into that marketplace. And I'm delighted to say the number of companies being supported has doubled in the last year. So in the modern world, we set up support for companies, but the success is going to be based on the skills in this factory, on the excellence of your product, and everything we can do to help promote that, whether it's next year's new model or anything else, we certainly shall do.
Try and squeeze in one more. Jerry Stillings, a vehicle builder.
Good morning, First Minister. I've been fortunate to be employed by ADL for the best part of 40 years, and during that time I've witnessed many, many changes in the industry. But what's really a concern to me is, given the amount that ADL has contributed to probably the local and the Scottish economy, I still have a sense of disappointment that we've received very little government assistance in the procurement of a new facility, which would probably enhance and secure jobs in the future. So my question to you would be, I would welcome your views on where the Scottish Government stands in supporting manufacturing in a future Scotland.
Well, I'm sure you're bluffing about the 40 years, incidentally. I'm going to ask Nicola to pick that up, but I think there's been a flow of assistance that Bill recognised in very recent times into this plant, and it's been for projects. I mean, 2 last year, there's been £3 million over the last few years in total. But for these 2 big projects, the one I was just discussing with Julie, and also the en route recharge hybrid project, which I really do understand fully, but sounds absolutely fantastic, and is going to be the way forward in terms of combining the reliability of electric buses with a recharge hybrid system. So that support is now flowing through, but it's essential to do it, and it's the way to support companies like this. You support companies who are innovating, companies who are going to be successful, companies which have grown their marketplace, and the Green Bus Fund, recent I know, but nonetheless important as a signpost for how we'll treat these issues in the future. Nicola?
Well, I hope, very much hope, that our presence here today launching this document is a sign of the commitment we've got to manufacturing. Companies like this are the Scottish economy. We rely on companies like this, their innovation, their investment, the skill of the workforce to project our economy and to grow the economy in a way that supports the services that I've just been talking about. We, as Bill was talking about earlier on, have worked hard as government to support this company as much as we can. First Minister and I have been chatting to Bill already this morning. We'll chat to him again before we go. We're keen to know how we can help more to further enable this company to go from strength to strength, and we are very keen to look at the targeted ways in which we can give you further assistance. Manufacturing generally, though, is a big priority area for the Scottish economy. If you get a chance to read this, I hope that shines through. Scottish Enterprise, which is our economic development agency, it supports I think around about 2,000 companies. More than half of them are manufacturing companies, because we recognise the importance of manufacturing as one of the key bases of the economy. So we, as government, look forward to working with you. I was going to say for the next 40 years, but that might, in your personal case, be a bit ambitious, but we're looking forward to working with you as a company to see you go from strength to strength through what you're doing now and what you'll do as technology advances in the future.
First Minister, Deputy First Minister, thank you.
Just one last point on that. The Green Bus Fund I mentioned a few minutes ago, and how this company had gained 2/3 of the orders from the Green Bus Fund. But, that was on merit. The reason that this company got the 2/3 orders, because you can't, just as you're not in a world where you can put up trade barriers, you're not in a world where you can say, right, we're going to have a Green Bus Fund and it will all go to Alexander Dennis's. The reason that Alexander Dennis's won 2/3 of the Green Bus Fund is because you're producing the best stuff. And so it's a key job. It's whatever we can do to make sure that continues with these new products. Because if you're producing the best product, then this company will continue to be successful. And the young lad over there in his second year of apprenticeship, if he so chooses, could be here in 40 years' time. And that's, to me, what it's all about. Good luck.
Mr. Salmon, thank you very much. Some of you guys probably remember me when I was 6 foot and had a head of hair. It's been a long journey. The one thing I've noticed from the days when I was a business and political writer right through to being in industry is the similarity that you pick up about politics and industry as you go through the years. Nicola was talking there about economic policy. We call it a business plan. Alec was explaining where he's going as a government and where he hopes to take this country, and the passion and the beliefs that lie at the core of the government he hopes to take forward. Well, we actually are very similar, and they're right up there on the wall. We call them our values. And It's interesting if you've got a plan, if you've got the right people, if you've got values, and as the First Minister says, if you produce the right products, you continue